Good morning. So today we're going to talk about friends. And I thought that it would only be fair if I called out one of my friends on staff. So I did warn her before I tell you this story. I texted her and said, "Hey, is it okay if I tell a story about us?" She responded, yes. I didn't tell her that either way, I was still going to tell the story. Uh, So a couple of months ago, when I took the position as director of discipleship, I sat down with the discipleship team and we started talking. Carla, who is our middle school coordinator, and I started talking about mission trip, and she said it'd be cool if you could come for a few days. Maybe the last 2 days they're going to be in Oklahoma, so you could drive up, hang out with us, go to Frontier City, which is like Six Flags, which is my worst nightmare. But okay, I'm all in. And somehow that ended up that I'm going to go the whole week. And that still sounded pretty great until right about this week when it hit 100 and whatever it hit, and I went, I don't know that I really want to go on mission trip. What kind of work are we going to do? We're going to be inside, right? Oh, no, it's usually like yard work. Oh, I'm not doing yard work in my own yard, y'all. So Carlos came in, sat down in my office one day after we decided this was going to happen, and she said, "I should really tell you something about myself." I said, "Okay." She said, on one of my very first mission trips, back in her interning days at the 9:30 service, she said, it's when I worked like 12 hours a week. So whatever that meant for her position at that point in time. She went on a mission trip with Carla Rogers, who was the director of youth ministry. She was on site with her team, and she called Carla and she said, "I think I'm dying. I need you to come get me. Like, I've got to go to the emergency room. My chest hurts. I can't breathe. I need to go." So Carla Rogers goes, picks her up, puts her in the car, turns on the AC, and says, "We're just going to drive around for just a minute." Carla's like, "But something is wrong." And so 30-ish minutes into their drive, Carla Hilburn says, "Oh, I think I feel better." Carla said, "Yeah, I think you were just overheated and needed to drink water." So the moral of the story for Carla is that I need to be aware that sometimes things get blown out of proportion just a little bit. So I'm trying to prepare myself. When I think about friends, I think about the great part about friends. And the great part about friends is that you get to tell stories like that. That you can laugh at them, but really you can laugh with them. Because doing life with somebody else makes it a whole lot more fun. Last week I was in the pool with my boys. We were playing outside. They were laughing and screaming, bless my neighbors, fighting over their Nerf guns, all the things. And all of a sudden it got really quiet. Now that's scary in a pool, except I looked up and this is what I saw. Y'all, that never happens. I texted every friend that I have that picture because that's what friends are for. So that you can prove that at some point in your life, everything is right. Today we're going to read about some friends in the Bible. Now, if I asked you who were Jesus' friends, you would probably say the disciples. That seems like a logical answer. I think if you ask the kids back in the children's area, they'd say the disciples. Now, I may be over children's education, so I might say, yes, that's what they're going to answer, but that seems like the normal answer. But today we're going to read about some of Jesus' other friends. We find these friends in the Gospels, in the book of Luke, in chapter 10. These friends were named Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Now, this is the first time that Mary and Martha appear. It starts in verse 38. While Jesus and his disciples were traveling, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him as a guest. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his message. So, this is the time in Jesus' life where he wasn't considered the most popular of guys. Maybe back in his time of starting on the teaching and preaching, he was this rock star guy, but by this point in time, he'd angered enough human beings that you didn't so much associate with him. We're talking about somewhere in the last year to 6 months of his life when the end was becoming pretty apparent. So for Mary and Martha to sit with this guy, you got to wonder why. I mean, yeah, they knew who he was. They knew that he might be something special. But he's not the choice to elevate your status in the world. How do you pick your friends? When you think about your friends, where have they come from? Some friends are probably from childhood. Some friends are friends you've met at church. My mom's best friends all came from a group that started sewing together when we were little bitty. Maybe your friends come from work. Maybe your friends come because you needed something from each other. But for Mary and Martha, Jesus was just a guy who showed up in their house. Here's Martha. She prepares the house. She fixes the food. She gets ready to go. Here's Mary, who sits at the feet of Jesus just to soak in all he has to say. And then they have a brother, Lazarus. Now, Jen Hatmaker wrote a book about this, and in her book she says, can you picture it? Martha scurrying around, Mary not doing a thing, Lazarus the blind man. It's like Modern Family a long time ago. And in walks Jesus. I mean, that'd be a decent sitcom, right? But were they really Jesus' friends? Is that something we can say? I mean, Jesus had all sorts of people that came to sit at his feet, right? Well, we pick back up. We find them in the book of John. Chapter 11. Lazarus has fallen ill. And in verse 4 it says, when he heard this, Jesus said, this illness isn't fatal. It's for the glory of God so that God's Son can be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. When he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed where he was. Skip ahead a few days, if you know the story. Lazarus passes away. Bethany was a little less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. Many Jews had come to comfort Martha and Mary after their brother's death. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, while Mary remained in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask God, God will give you. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Martha replied, I know that he will rise in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She replied, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, God's Son, the one who is coming into the world. Friends. When I was younger, my grandparents lived close by, both sets. I mean, so close that they were my only babysitters. All I really wanted was a cool older teen to come watch me. But no, I got to hang out with Grandma and Grandpa. Now I really appreciate that in life. But I had Grandma and Grandpa Williams, my mom's parents, and Grandma and Grandpa Ton, my dad's parents. And then there was this Uncle Morris and Aunt Nalda. Now at about 4 or 5, I started going, who are they? Like, I know they're not the age of my aunt and uncle, like my other aunt and uncles. They're my grandparents' age, but they're not really grandparents, but we keep calling these people uncle and aunt. What is happening? So I asked my grandpa, I said, who is Uncle Morris and Aunt Nalda? And he said, well, your Uncle Morris and I were college roommates. We went to the war together. We started our church together. And so we just decided from the beginning that you should know that these people are family. I think that was the first time that I really knew what it meant to have friends that are family. Do you have friends that are family? Fast forward, and here I am with 2 little ones. And we decided, well, I should say I accepted that at some point my 2 little boys probably aren't going to tell me everything. I mean, I could live in denial and say I'm the coolest mom in the world, and they're going to tell me everything, right? Jenny Rogers is looking at me like, yeah, dream on. So we decided early on that we had a group of close friends that we trusted and we loved, and we were going to call them uncles and aunts from the get-go. Because the day that my children decide they're not going to tell me something, they're going to go tell somebody else. And I'd really like to make sure it's somebody who's going to tell them something that I want them to hear. Do you have friends that are family? How many of you have a friend that you would call family? You can raise, oh yeah, timid, shy. Oh, there, hands went up. Jesus. Sometimes it's easy to think of him as the Jesus on the cross, the Jesus that died for our sins, the grand story of Lent and Easter. But Jesus was fully human. Think about that for a minute. Jesus was fully human. So just like we need our people, he needed his people. And while the disciples were followers of Jesus, we find out in this text that Jesus had friends. We know that because in it says Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Can you imagine what that feels like? To have your friend, Jesus, love you. There's something about that that makes him far more human for me. And maybe far more tolerant of the people that I surround myself with. Now, if you know the story of Mary and Martha, you know that when Jesus came for the first time, Martha put it together. She cooked, she got everything set up, she scurried around, she wanted everything to be perfect. Mary, her sister, just plopped down and said, yeah, whatever, it's all going to work out. I'm going to be with Jesus. Now, I'm a Martha. I am a preparer. I like it all to be in the place. I like to make sure everybody's taken care of. I'm the host. But in that passage, Jesus says, slow down. Don't be afraid to just be present. Right now, my kids are into Legos. So when you walk in the store to the Lego aisle, or aisles, depending on what store you go on, you learn those really fast so you don't go to the multiple aisle store. You see this beautiful box. Look what's in this box. They pick out what they want. They say, look, Mom, it's all these. You take it home. You open the box. And out they come with these. Hey, Mom, make this look like that. No, I didn't like Legos when I was a kid. There's my oldest right there in the front row. Here's the thing. This reminds me of Mary and Martha. Martha knows what it's supposed to look like. Mary gets that sometimes we're just sitting in the middle of the pieces. That sometimes what we picture our families to be, mom and dad, brother and sister, grandma and grandpa, sometimes it's so much greater and so much larger than we can imagine. Jesus was an unlikely friend for Mary and Martha. Do you have an unlikely friend? I do. Her name is Caitlin. We grew up together. Her mom and my mom are best friends to the point where they live next door to each other now. Like, we're talking serious best friends. Caitlin was shy and reserved. She liked to be in the back corner. She didn't want anybody to notice her. Just like me, right? Unlikely friends. A couple of months ago, I was in her wedding. It turns out that God puts a whole lot of unlikely in our lives to remind us that sometimes when we sit together, when we stop, that we can find the greatest and deepest and most meaningful moments. Our moms group that meets on Monday morning, you've heard a lot about them. They're new this summer. Now, let me define moms for you. Moms of kids my age, moms of nursing babies, moms of elementary kids, high school kids, and then Sue Herring and Brenda Nunnally, who have kids my age. So moms spans the globe here. This happened in 8:15 and 9:32. The men in the room suddenly check out. I promise you that this is all going to matter for all of you. They're reading a book called Present Over Perfect. Present over perfect. Mary versus Martha. And in one of the chapters as I was flipping through, I found this Bible verse. God's voice thunders in marvelous ways. He does great things beyond our understanding. He says to the snow, fall on the earth, and to the rain, shower. Be a mighty downpour. What struck me about this is God didn't say, hey, snow, fall down as snow, harden as ice, melt as rain. You've got all these things you got to do. He said, snow, fall down like snow. He said to the rain, not I need you to rain because of A, B, C, D, E. Here are all the things you've got to be. He said to the rain, rain, cause a downpour. This is where friendship gets tricky. It's really easy to get caught up in what you think someone else wants you to be. This friend wants me to have the perfectly clean house. This friend wants me to be there all the time. This friend wants me to only call every other Wednesday. But if we look at this passage, God's not calling any of us to be what we think someone else wants us to be. God's calling us to be exactly who He created us to be. Martha, Mary, Jesus. Can you imagine sitting in that kitchen? No pretense. Hey, Martha, I know that you like to do all this, but just come sit. What do we start to learn about ourselves and each other if we stop trying to be everything everybody wants us to be and start just being who God created us to be together? When I think of Mary and Martha and Jesus, I think of their friendship in terms of there they are, and I'll tell you who was there. God was there. It wasn't three people sitting in a room. It was three people surrounded by the love of God. So when I think about friendships in my life and I think about the church, I think there is no other place where I can guarantee you that God is right here. We all come and sit here for different reasons. Maybe you're looking for forgiveness. Maybe you've done so many things that you don't even want to think about, that you're coming here to try to figure out how to get rid of it. Maybe you're here to say thanks. You don't know what you've done to deserve all the good things in life, but maybe this is the place to start. Whether you're looking for something here, you don't know what you're doing here, you've just been here for so long, you still show up in the seats. We all come to this place desiring and looking for a deeper relationship with God. A deeper understanding of who God is as our friend. And here's the great thing, we don't have to guess about it. While Jesus taught in parables, and there are lots of stories, here's a story where Jesus teaches us not by telling, but by doing. Jesus sat in the presence of the people He loved. And when times got hard and when things got rough, He came back. Because He loved deeply. So that's your challenge this week, friends. Maybe be a little less Martha and a little more Mary. Sit in the presence of each other. Enjoy the presence of God with you. And be thankful because our friends are our family. And we are all beloved children of God. Amen.